Hola, hola, ¿cómo están? Yo soy Lina María otra vez por acá saludándonos. Bueno, el día de hoy yo les tengo el video de una entrevista a una mujer increíble. Ella es Whitney Webb, es una reportera que ha estado detrás de la investigación de procesos oscuros aquí en Estados Unidos. Whitney Webb ha trabajado para el descubrimiento de historias terribles de los últimos tiempos. Ustedes recuerdan el caso de este señor Jeffrey Epstain relacionado con problemas de trata de niñas, prostitución con menores. Bueno, estos y muchos casos así los revela ella en su libro y aquí les tengo los detalles más importantes de la entrevista.
You worried ever about your safety?
No, and the reason I say that is because I think, a lot of what we're facing is an energetic and spiritual battle, I guess you could say.
But we have to start with Jeffrey Epstein.
So he was sort of at the center of a lot of scandals, but not necessarily at the top, right? I think he was more maybe middle management in a sense, but very central to a lot of these things going on.
So was he a spy?
I think he definitely had intelligence connections, and there's a lot, to suggest that was the case. I think one of the earliest hints we heard of that was having a Secretary of Labor, Alex Acosta, under Trump, say that one of the reasons he was pressured into giving Epstein a sweetheart deal during his first arrest in Florida was because he had been told by unspecified actors that Epstein belonged to intelligence. When you have his close association with someone like Ghislaine Maxwell in the mix, and her father had affiliations with numerous intelligence agencies, it really is an open question.
He was kind of a bad guy. I'm reading your work about him, and explain who he was.
So Robert Maxwell was involved in many things, but he definitely played a major role in undermining U.S. national security by selling bug software to nuclear laboratories in the United States.
All of his family, they were killed in the Holocaust, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so he's in the West, England. He survives, becomes kind of William Randolph Hearst of England.
Yeah, media mogul, sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Bueno, ese tema es un poquito complejo. Ella hasta aquí está diciendo, primero, que este señor Jeffrey Epstein efectivamente tenía las manos untadas en varias cosas. Segundo, que cuando tuvo su primer arresto en Florida, el secretario de Estado de Trump precisó que debían darle un trato especial, ya que según actores no especificados, este señor hacía parte de la inteligencia de Estados Unidos.
So Robert Maxwell was very interested in having his family be like the Kennedy family, a political power dynasty. And that's part of why he started moving into New York City around, just a year or two before he ended up dying. And Ghislaine Maxwell was sent to New York sort of to be his emissary. Into the U.S., and he wanted her actually to marry a Kennedy. And I think if you look a lot at the psychology of Robert Maxwell, he seems to have had narcissistic elements, and that could be because of the trauma of his past. And a lot of times narcissistic parents see their children as extensions of themselves. Yeah. And in addition, she was basically managed by her father from a very early age. He managed her, tried to manage her romantic life. He tried to manage what job she would have, and she was very dependent on him. So when he is dead in 1991, it makes sense that she would attach herself to someone with a lot of the similar characteristics, right?
So Dad didn't know about Jeffrey Epstein, wasn't alive at that point?
Well, the allegation have been made by people that worked with Robert Maxwell in the 80s that Jeffrey Epstein was seen in his offices frequently in the United Kingdom.
Hasta aquí para resumirles el cuento. Jeffrey Epstein está casado con esta mujer Ghislaine Maxwell, quien es la hija de Robert Maxwell. Robert Maxwell fue un magnate millonario de Reino Unido que se dedicaba a todo el tema de medios en su país. Fue uno de los agentes más efectivos de Mossad, que es la agencia de inteligencia israelí. Vendió softwares maliciosos al gobierno de Estados Unidos, y la historia de este sujeto es, su familia murió en el Holocausto, entonces su perfil, digamos, tiene esto de trauma por su familia, pero se convirtió en un personaje narcisista.
Why is it nobody else is reporting on this?
Increasingly aware that a lot of people in the American public, you know, a lot of the names I was coming across, most people weren't going to be familiar with.
Correct.
You know, banks like the Bank of Credit and Commerce International, or BCCI, the scandal that involved. As far as I'm concerned, the Clinton-Epstein relationship is much more damaging than the Trump-Epstein relationship, but there, you know, are obvious reasons for concern in both of them.
It's not just the horrific, evil sex trafficking that was going on. It's also massive corruption
and financial
crimes.
And that's particularly glaring with the Epstein-Clinton relationship. How Hillary Clinton, her office, was involved in finding the suicide note when there was nothing in the briefcase, and all of that later. It's very interesting. The only mention of her name would be in trying to absolve that particular fundraiser of, you know.
At times you're just like, how do you deal with it?
Well, I'm a mother, and I just, I have to keep going. I don't know. I have to keep saying something because my kids are going to live in this world.
Right.
And there's certain things that I just find unacceptable.
Here now.
Yeah.
Explain what transhumanism is and why it is so dangerous.
Yeah, so I'll just probably start with the history of it. So there was a man named Julian Huxley. He's the brother of the famous author Aldous Huxley. He was president of the British Eugenics Society. The United Nations is created after World War II. He is put in charge of UNESCO. In writing his vision for UNESCO, Julian Huxley says about eugenics, we need to make the unthinkable thinkable again. 10 years later, he coins the term transhumanism. I would say, you know, if you look, for example, at the new head of the FDA, who very few people have bothered to look into, Robert Califf, he's a former Google Health executive. Google Health has a joint venture with GlaxoSmithKline called Galvani Bioelectronics. I think the former head of that was Moncef Slaoui, who was in charge of Operation Warp Speed, and their focus is what they call bioelectronic medicine, which is, you know, injectable nanotechnology that can manipulate your central nervous system. What are the implications of that? We have the person that just purchased Twitter, making a brain chip company. He's also a major contractor to the U.S. military. He has a major conflict of interest with Chinese Silicon Valley equivalents like Tencent. And, you know,
he says, and I love this, he says, that's one of the reasons why I want to get off the planet. He says his work is to find a way to compete against the transhumanistic, you know, folly. You don't believe that at all?
I don't buy it. No.
Okay.
If you look at that company, they had animal trials. Many of the monkeys that was tested and died after the brain chip was put in. If that were my company, I would reformulate everything or shut it down if it was going to kill that many animals. But it's already moved into human trials. I mean, it's,
even though it's killing all the monkeys.
Well, it killed many monkeys. I forget the exact number, but a significant portion.
Entonces, el primer director de la UNESCO recordemos que es un organismo especializado de las Naciones Unidas, de la ONU, fue un señor que se llamó Julian Huxley. ¿Y quién era él? Era el hermano de Aldous Huxley, que era el presidente de la Sociedad Británica de Eugenesia. O sea, ya van viendo los hilos cómo se conectan, ya van viendo cómo fue que nacieron todas estas asociaciones que se supone que están para el bien de la humanidad. Hay un montón de fuerzas oscuras acá. Eugenismo, además, recordemos que fue financiado por familias como la familia Rockefeller. Rockefeller, para los que no saben, es una de las familias más importantes de Estados Unidos, o al menos de Nueva York. Mencionad Elon Musk, que ha hecho ya pruebas en un montón de animales, de monos, y que está iniciando sus pruebas en humanos. Todos sabemos que Elon Musk tiene pues toda la plata del mundo, que tiene muchísimo poder. Ella menciona también todos los vínculos con el gobierno chino. Y a mí esto me deja un poquito fría. Sinceramente, yo simpatizaba con Elon Musk porque veía, o lo que veo es que él siempre se para en su discurso de que defiende los niños, las familias, de que no están a favor de todos estos procesos pro aborto o de que tengan atracción hacia los niños. Entonces, pues aquí es cuando uno tiene que reflexionar.
We're looking at feudalism and how do you create a class of slaves that cannot even cognitively rebel ever again. I mean, unfortunately, you look at the World Economic Forum, a lot of the banks are very involved. And when you are in bed with the banks and the banks are in bed with you, it's very hard to go against that in today's world. So they're going to try and force compliance. And, a big part of this, you have the move towards a central bank digital currency and all of that at the same time, which is programmable money. The state decides whether you save or you spend. They decide what you can and can't buy and all this stuff. And people like Elon Musk coming in and saying, I'm going to take over Twitter for free speech. And then he also says, I want to make Twitter into basically like WeChat, which is, basically a surveillance app to use in China. That's for your finances, your social media, pretty much everything. Look at who has taken over our education system. You go back to things like the Rockefeller family or their role in healthcare. There's a lot of oligarch families that have very specific agendas that have really taken over government policy, and it's been like that for a very long time. Mm-hmm. And most people my age just, I could see a lot of this stuff, like we're too dependent on corporations that have a lot of nasty agendas or do bad things. There's a lot of issues, a lot of illegal wars, no accountability at the highest levels of government. If people my age don't start doing something, it's going to get really bad. Well, that's the activism that's put in front of young people today, and they're being told that's what activism is, and that's the activism that's sort of in vogue because it's shown and treated by mainstream media as sticking it to the man. But really what it's about is controlling how much energy people can use. And if you control how much energy a household can use, you control their economic activity. You also control how big their family can get.
Algo que me causa curiosidad y que yo creo que a más de uno le cae como un balde de agua fría es el tema del activismo, ¿sabes? Como que los mismos gobiernos, esta misma gente que tiene tanto poder le ha dicho a la población que es ser activista y les han vendido las razones por las cuales tienen que ser activistas. Entonces, es todo esto del cambio climático, es que vamos todos a apoyar el derecho al aborto, un montón de cosas que ni siquiera ellos mismos lo pensaron, sino que esta misma gente se las ha vendido, se las ha dado y ellos la adoptaron como su lucha. Estas familias superpoderosas que siempre han mantenido un poder sobre el mundo completamente, han estado involucradas en todo. O sea, ella misma dice, ¿quiénes han estado liderando desde siempre o desde hace mucho tiempo al menos el tema de la educación? ¿De dónde viene la educación que nosotros recibimos? De los niños. ¿Cuáles son las ideologías que estamos recibiendo? ¿Qué es lo que está pasando con la educación? Pues todo esto es financiado, todo esto viene planeado desde agendas. Todos estos efectos de las redes sociales. ¿Cuáles son los creadores de las redes sociales? Toda esta gente que tiene un montón de poder, un montón de plata, que ha dominado literal el mundo. Nos quieren esclavos de pantallas, quieren que los niños cada vez tengan menos capacidad de pensar. ¿Usted se considera activista? ¿Qué causa está defendiendo? ¿No será que usted está haciendo parte de uno de los propósitos que tiene esta gente que tiene todas las intenciones más oscuras en el mundo? Piénselo. Haga investigaciones por su cuenta. De verdad yo lo invito a que se involucre más, a que le ponga un sentido crítico a las cosas, a que no se traiga el cuento completo. ¿Quién está financiando, por ejemplo, las campañas LGTBI? ¿Quiénes están financiando, por ejemplo, el aborto? ¿Usted realmente cree que los gobiernos o todas estas asociaciones hacen eso porque se preocupan por la gente? Gracias por acompañarme en este nuevo episodio. Si a ustedes les gusta el contenido, porfa, suscríbanse, denle like a este video, compártanlo y nos vemos en otra oportunidad.